Hello everybody, here's video number 2. This one's going to be about the annotated bibliography. It should only be a few minutes. I'm going to go over some of the basic things from the prompt so you can hear it once more, internalize it. Then I'm going to go over, together with you, the annotated bibliography example that I've put up on BBLearn. So maybe take a second to pause this video and get those files up on your computer so you can follow along as we go through it together. So here I am looking at the annotated bibliography prompt that you can find in the Collaborative Research Project folder, which we've looked at before. It's the same folder in those writing assignments tabs. Okay, and I'm looking at the list of tasks here. You're collecting a list of 10 sources, so I'll be looking for all of those 10. I often, when I do this assignment, I'll see people turn in annotated bibliographies that get close to 10, maybe 7 or 8, but they kind of, at the last minute, just turned in what they have. If you want to get those 10 homework points, just make sure you're getting all 10 of those sources, and remember that this is doing yourself a favor because a 10-source CRP is a well-researched CRP. And you might even end up having more than 10 in your final project. So yeah, if I see what I'm looking for in this annotated bibliography, each group member is going to get 10 homework points. And it's due the same date that it's been due, the 26th, so at the end of this week here. You're doing 4 things in those entries. You're summarizing, so providing 1 or 2 sentences explaining what the source was about. You're evaluating or giving me reasons why this source is worth your time, why this information is useful to you. Assessment, the assessment section is where you explain to me where this is going to be helpful to you in your paper. So it's going to be in the lit review. Does it pertain to a particular sub-question? Explain how you're going to be using that. And this will probably be the most useful part of the annotation for you in the future. Something you'll go back to and see how you're going to be plugging this source into the lit review. And then finally, at least 2 excerpts from the source. So a couple of quotations, a quotation and a photo or a chart or whatever might happen to be in that source that you find useful. And so there's 10 sources and there are 3 or 4 of you. And again, you don't have to all do all of this work. You can divide this up. I do think it's a great idea for you all to look at each other's work so you can see if somebody maybe needs help with grammar, but maybe that same person can help you hit all 4 of those parts of the annotation. So you're working together even as you delegate the tasks. Okay, I'm going to look at my phone here, the example. So bring up the example that you see that starts at the top left where it says Mr. DeVG, September 23rd, 2019. So this is from last semester, a student in my 205 class. This student got an A on this annotation. I think maybe an A-. So there are some things that they could have done well, but it is modeling a good annotated bibliography for us. So I'm going to take a closer look at the first annotation and then kind of just let you look through the rest of it. But we're starting with the source here that's cited. And actually the very first thing in the citation seems to be missing something. And I wonder if you can take a second to see what that is. I'm looking at the very first citation underneath the header. There's no either first name or first initial in that author here. So it's G. Dicing. I don't know how to pronounce that, but we seem to be getting a last name, but no first name or initial. So you'll want to go back over those citations, even the ones that you didn't do, maybe your partner did, to make sure that it's hitting everything that we want to hit. And your textbook is a great resource for citations. And other than that, the citation itself looks okay. And so we get here into the annotation. And we see that it's in the form of 1 paragraph. And it's okay to do it that way. It's okay to have a few shorter paragraphs. But I don't want to see like a bullet point list. I want to see actual paragraphs underneath each citation. So our first sentence here is a one-sentence overview of the website. So I'm getting a little bit of context here. And then I get a summary of what the article is saying. So it says here, this specific article highlights the Senate's decision to pass an act on opioid crisis response and intervention. So this is useful for me to see what this site is that you're using. It's also useful for future you to remember what this source is even saying. If you're anything like me, even if you do have the organization to keep like a running list of the links that you're finding, it's kind of tedious and it takes a while to like remember what each link is supposed to be and what these sources even are. So that summary is going to help you jog your memory. After the couple sentences that give us that summary, we see the assessment, this sentence that says, this article is very political, but it is still unbiased and focuses on only the facts of what is in the act and what has been approved. I believe this website and article is moderately credible because it is the nationally recognized website for American hospital organizations. Okay. And then we finish up with this student saying how they're going to be using this article. And in this first entry, I would say this is maybe the area that needed the most work. So let's read it together and then we'll talk about what they could have done. So if I do end up using this source, first of all, you should use this source if it's in your annotated bibliography. So that little clause there is not really necessary. I would like to implement what is outlined in the Opioid Crisis Response Act, as in the, quote, package would reauthorize funding to states to address opioid abuse, ... I would also like to include what the House of Representatives has approved, meaning the et cetera, et cetera. So I wonder if you can take a second to think of what the student could have done more or done differently here. So it's honing in on the part of the article that is the most interesting to them, and that's great. They're saying what they want to discuss, but they're not really saying how they're going to discuss it or what specific idea it's giving to them or what question they have that this will help answer. We have this kind of vague word implement. I want to know how they're implementing that, which is the whole point of this part of the annotation. So try to be specific when you're doing this part of the annotation and tell me how this source is going to help you. And okay, now that we've looked in depth at that first annotation, I'm scrolling through the rest of them, and one very common thing that I see in annotated bibliographies is the first maybe 2 or 3 citations and annotations are great, and then as I scroll through to the rest of them, they start getting shorter and shorter. This person isn't really doing that here. Maybe a couple of them look a little brief, but I can sort of see the weariness happening and people wanting to just be done with the annotated bibliography. Keep in mind that these are going to be in alphabetical order. So no matter what order you're drafting them in, you still want to order them by the author's last name because that's how any citation page always works. So that might ensure that you're not really doing them in the order that they'll appear. But give every annotation your full effort. Okay, so this gives you a sense of what it will look like. Yours, let's see, this is a 8.5 pages long. So keep in mind again that that's divided by 3 or 4. And if it seems like a lot of work, annotated bibliographies are a lot of work and maybe not super fun, but super, super useful. So that's my video on this annotated bibliography example. Please send me an email if you have any questions, as always, and I'll finish with a little view of this nice crackling fire that I made. It's been kind of a dreary day. I'm filming this on Monday, and it hailed and snowed and rained, and now it's finally looking a little bit more placid out there. But I hope wherever you are, the weather has been nicer than it has been in Flagstaff. Okay, this video went a little long, so I'll try to keep the ones in the future down a few minutes. Okay, bye everyone.